Welcome back. Today is day 2, and the topic is, of course, all things buyer agency and commissions. When will you survive the great commission shift? And this is day 2. If you've not listened to the first 4 points that we presented yesterday, please go back and listen to those points, or if you're on YouTube, obviously watch those points. So without any further delay, we're going to jump right back in. We're on point number 5. Julie, let's talk about NAR's policy on steering buyers based on compensation, because after all, isn't that really the heart of what this whole commission sharing lawsuit was truly about? It was about the fact that when a listing agent was presenting to a seller, the belief was, though I don't really believe this, but the belief was that the seller wasn't given a choice as to whether or not they're going to pay a buyer agent commission.
Right.
The buyer agent commission was going to be 2.5% or 3%, no negotiation. And if any negotiation were to happen, it would come off the listing side of the commission. And that was just the way, the belief was that was how the industry had been working. To some extent that's true, but to a large extent,
Sure.
It depends, right, on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other belief and the other reason I think that this litigation happened and was successful is because they believed, or they were able to convince people, a jury in this case, that you have a steering issue going on where buyer brokers were showing homes that paid the most commission to their buyers. And that was oftentimes, or the belief was, that wasn't in the best interest of, the actual buyers, or even maybe, I suppose, the sellers. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the weeds and let's talk more about this. Now, what we're not going to talk about is we're not going to debate, we'll try not to debate, about whether or not, our own opinions on these things, because truthfully at this point, our opinions don't matter. We just have to play by the rules and play by the guidelines. Will some of these changes and will the dogmatic approach to these changes, will it evolve over time? Of course it will. Will we see some major changes in, all these types of things that we've been talking about over the next 6 to 12 months? Yeah, because some of these things aren't practical. For example, Julie and I talked about this yesterday. I'm really not sure. I can't even conceive of how they're going to go about policing whether buyer agents are using exclusive buyer agency contracts.
Exactly.
I don't know how that's going to happen, because listing agents, don't make the mistake of asking all the buyers before they show your property whether they have exclusive signed. That's not your job. Your job is to represent the seller. And if you're doing something to run off prospective buyers, you could actually get in trouble because
for that.
For that.
You were trying to comply, and you believed that it was somehow your job to be the compliance police for the buyer's agents, when in fact, what Tim just said, I hope you guys are paying attention, because I have seen quite a few instances of that. Mainly this comes in the form of agents complaining online. How am I ever going to sell a property if every time there's a showing, I ask for the buyer agreement and they're not ponying it up, so I disallow the showing? That's actually more of a violation.
You could I tell you what it's going to do. You're going to lose that listing. It's going to become expired and somebody else is going to get it.
Yep.
So Julie and I have a theory that you're going to see a lot of expired listings toward the end of this year because of all the listing agents that don't, and look, listing agents, it's not necessarily your fault. Your offices and your brokers and your office managers and your team leads.
Confusing.
It's confusing.
You're trying to do the right thing when you do that. I understand that.
Right, but here's the gist of it. There is no mechanism in place to actually enforce whether the exclusives are being signed. There isn't. There's no exclusive buyer agency contract police that are going to follow you around while you're showing properties. The listing agents aren't going to do it. I can't imagine there's any incentive for the brokers to do it. They're a broker. You never go to the office, right? That's the reason eXp Realty is so successful. It's a virtual real estate office. Well, guess what? How is exactly this whole thing going to be policed? The MLS is supposed to be policing these. How are they going to do it? Are they going to somehow just randomly call you and find out you showed a house to a buyer? Maybe they're going to pull the data from Supra and they're going to see that you showed a house, and then they're going to insist that you somehow send the paperwork showing that you have an exclusive signed? Really? They legally can do that? What if the buyer doesn't want their information shared with anybody, even in the MLS? The idea that this can be unilaterally enforced, like essentially a police, tagging you for speeding, it just doesn't make any sense. And because of that and a lot of other things, there is no doubt there's going to be some more, let's just say, high-level discussions made on that will happen on really how we're actually going to put these changes in place. Right now, what the MLSs are doing is they're probably overreaching. $500 penalties, $5,000 penalties. Yeah. Really? MLS? How are you going to enforce that? Exactly. How are you going to collect it?
And also, if that's on because of a showing, who was actually damaged by that? Give me a break, right?
No, but seriously, if you have a buyer that shows up in your life and you show them a house and they decide not to buy it, and at that point, because you showed them a house, you are in violation if you didn't get an exclusive signed. Who exactly was harmed in that? Who?
Well, see, and we promise not to speculate much, but in our opinions, I think you and I would agree that it's not that we're against the buyer being committed to the agent. That's a good thing, obviously. It's where in the transaction this is being asked to occur is very clunky and awkward for the agent and for the buyer. That, I think, is the issue, and certainly translates then into the enforcement of it. So I think that's going to be a gray cloud for a while.
Well, on the listing side, you would often, the way we coach and train you guys as Premier Coaching members to work with sellers, it's a 7-step process. And I got news for you. Step one isn't Mr. Seller sign the exclusive listing contract, right? Step one isn't, you're now exclusively obligated to me for 6 months, and that's just the way it rolls. You're going to have to earn that seller's business. You have to pre-qualify them. You're going to have to send a pre-listing pack. You're going to have to present to them, and then you're going to get the paperwork signed, provided you've answered all their questions. The same process now applies to working with buyers. So buyers, you've been on, let's just use words, you've been a little spoiled because your commission has been an entitlement to the transaction. You show a house, your buyer buys it, you get paid. You didn't have to worry about showing your value. I'm so sick of hearing, let alone saying that.
No, you mean articulate your value.
Articulate your value, right? You haven't had to do it like a listing agent has. Well, now you do. And I know what you're worried about. What the hell value are you going to show to that prospective buyer? I know you're good. I know you're successful. I know you're dedicated. I know you're caring. I know you know the market. I know you're going to work your butt off, but so is everybody else. So you're going to have to learn what you're going to do to truly set yourself apart in the eyes of the buyers, just like listing agents have always had to do when trying to earn a listing from a seller, especially in a competitive situation. That's the number one reason why Julie and I have created the Ethical Real Estate Professional designation. And we talked a lot about this yesterday. I'm not going to talk a lot about it today, but text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Text the word buyer to 47372, B-U-Y-E-R. And then you will learn, once we release the program within the next couple of weeks, about our new, frankly, I think it's going to be something the industry is going to absolutely, totally evolve as a result of us creating this product. Bold statement, but I think it's true. We have created a turnkey solution that's encompassing the new rules and guidelines and the best practices that have been in real estate for over, for at least 30 years. So you can be competitive when earning buyers exclusive loyalty to you through exclusive buyer agency contracts. Don't be intimidated by this, guys. It's just a slight change to a few processes. Again, make sure you listen to the first day of this content that we presented yesterday, because we got a lot into the weeds about the different ways the commissions are going to get paid. So Julie, let's go on to point number 6.
Okay. And again, we're going to just stick on this idea of steering and compensation just for a second.
Okay. So NAR's settlement on steering and compensation. And again, just to repeat this, one of the two big elements of this, I think, settlement, at least as Julie and I interpreted it, was number one, the seller wasn't given an option to pay a buyer agent commission, or at least was told basically it's not a negotiable aspect of the of a listing. I do think that did happen. I just do. I think that happened probably more often than it did not, because a lot of listing agents out there probably didn't have, were probably told by their brokers that this is what the co-op is always going to be. Don't negotiate that. If you have to reduce commission during the listing side, that is the way the business has been done. So yes,
That's
I do.
True.
And I don't hate on me for saying this, but I do believe that was something that now that it's essentially out in the open, wasn't really in the best interest of the seller, because the seller wasn't told they could negotiate the buyer agent commission.
Even though they could have, and sometimes did in the case of maybe a for sale by owner or something like that. But overall, yes, it was basically baked in.
There's been lawsuits, guys, if you haven't been in the business for as long as we have, there's been many lawsuits over this. There's big lawsuits that happened just over the last 30 years where you'd see essentially, brokers suing each other and things like that over similar type things. Mm-hmm. There's always been a bit of an agreement that the buyer agent commission was always going to be 2.5% or 3%. And you can tell that's true by looking in the MLS. So as far as the litigation goes, and this is the reason I think NAR settled, frankly, is they knew that was something that existed. Was there a formal cabal with a bunch of fat old bald men smoking cigars sitting in a room, price fixing? I was never invited to that room. I don't smoke cigars and I have hair, but I was never invited. No. I don't know if anyone else was invited.
No, it wasn't like that, but it was still a fact that it was basically understood.
So that was one element. And the other element was it was essentially presented to the jury, and they believed it. The buyer's agents were choosing to show houses that had a higher co-op commission. Now, conceptually, that makes sense. And I remember during the real estate crash that when guess what? There was a huge buyer's market. It wasn't unusual for a premium commission over, whatever the market average was, to be put on listings to make them more competitive in the marketplace. Now, but here's the interesting thing. It did not have an actual, from what I remember from the research that was done, it did not actually have a positive effect on the sellability of the property. So if you have, in that case, 20 houses for sale in a particular neighborhood, and one pays 2.5%, another pays 3%, another pays 3.5%, but at the end of the day, the buyer was going to choose which house was best for them. And the one that paid 3.5%, if that was the one that was best for them, well, that was the one that they bought.
Sure.
But they're going to choose the one that's best for them and their family. There's no amount of salesmanship, if you want to call it that, that's going to, I can't imagine a conversation where a buyer's agent is trying to sell, air quoting, a house to a buyer that the buyer doesn't want. I don't know if that's ever happened.
It doesn't work that way.
I mean, it doesn't work that way. Buyers, other than investors, buyers buy houses. You guys are just, for the most part, just get out of the way, and whether they like the house or they don't, that's up to them to decide. But essentially the contention was there was steering that was going on. And the steering was basically around which houses paid the most commission. So those are the two big bugaboos that we are now having to essentially work within to make it so that it's more transparent, so that there's more, just like on the listing side, this is what I'm going to do to earn your business, Mr. Seller. This is the commission I charge. This is how you're going to hold me accountable. This is what, the ramifications are if I don't meet your expectations. The same exact conversation is now happening on the buyer side. Be glad, but the worst thing you can do is procrastinate learning to be competitive in the new market that these, essentially these new guidelines require.
Okay, so let's just clarify, what does NAR actually say so that you cannot speculate, you cannot get your information from a Facebook survey. What does NAR actually say about this? They say the commitment, and this is again regarding steering and compensation, commitment, NAR reaffirms that MLS participants must not limit listings based on broker compensation. You're not going to show things based on what they're paying.
Well, they're not going to show a commission rate in the MLS.
That's right. Okay, written agreements. Required agreements will outline that brokers may not receive compensation exceeding the agreed amount in the agreement with the buyer, eliminating any incentive to steer buyers towards higher compensation listings. That means that if your agreement with your buyer states that X, either a dollar amount or a percentage, and the listing that they fall in love with happens to be offering more, you're not making the difference. You're just making what the agreement was. That's just a clarification.
Well, you can go down, but you can't go up. So
yeah.
you can't. So if you have an exclusive sign, and you basically say you're going to work with a buyer for $1,000, but it turns out the seller was willing to pay a buyer agent commission up towards, like, say 3% of the sale price, and you can't go back and edit your exclusive to get the extra, incentive that was being paid for by the seller. So you need to write your exclusives so the amount that your buyer is, essentially, that's on the exclusive buyer agency. It's even hard for me to say this, to be honest with you. It's so weird.
I know.
But you're going to have to write it for a higher number than whatever you believe the prevailing rate to be, so that you can go down. And you can explain that and even write it in your exclusive buyer agency contracts. And part of Ethical Real Estate Professional, we're actually going to show you how to do that. So when you're presenting it to a seller, you're going to put a dollar amount or put a percent amount, and then explain and put it right there in writing that it's essentially going to adjust to whatever the seller is actually willing to pay, right? You're going to just, learn how to negotiate, basically. But the real important thing here is the NAR, and MLS basically, though there are some MLSs that are starting to, drag their feet on this. And I know there's brokers that are trying to game this too.
Yeah.
Do not put an offer to compensate, or what a buyer broker commission is, in any place, MLS or otherwise. That's what it's going to get. That's the easy button to welcome some litigation at your doorstep.
Yeah, because they've been very clear on that, right?
Yeah, they've been very.
And in fact, we've read article after article, especially today, about the fact that attorneys are specifically looking for those violations.
Well, it's
because
easy.
It's so easy. I mean, anybody could find that. Now, with regards to this,
let me finish.
Go
So
ahead.
like we talked a lot about yesterday, and again, listen to yesterday's show, that does not mean you cannot have the seller offer a concession. And in the public-facing comments in the MLS, just put seller will consider all concessions, and call me, and here's my cell phone number, and do not, don't have them call and hit a voicemail where you're rattling off what the commission is going to be. That's a violation. So make it so there's a conversation that's going to then happen, which means listing agents, you're going to have to work a little bit harder. But again, I'm going to tell you that gives you a competitive advantage, because when you're trying to earn the business in a competitive listing situation and you're explaining to the seller how you actually work with buyer's agents, and the other listings or the other listing agents that they're considering, they don't even bring that topic up, let alone demonstrate to the seller exactly how you're working with the other agents, you're going to have a competitive advantage that they're not. So whenever you see something that you perceive is going to be a hindrance to the industry or a transaction, you've got to make it so that becomes a competitive advantage for you and how you approach it. So I want you to open your mind to the fact, and Julie and I say this a lot, the greatest fortunes of men and women have always been made during the greatest times of change. Don't take too damn long to change or you're going to miss the opportunity.
Well put. All right. So, as promised yesterday, your best practice is your most simple practice. Meet with all of your buyer prospects in person, ideally. It could be at your office. You can meet for coffee or even on Zoom, but you're going to meet with them or their house.
Yeah.
Okay. Present your buyer presentation, which explains the buying process, how you work, what they can expect from you, and what you can expect from them, how buyer representation works, the fact that it's negotiable, and what your unique guarantees are. Ideally, best practice, obtain the buyer's signature on the buyer representation agreement. Note, if they're not ready for this yet, you can use the one-time showing agreement first, get to know each other, show a house or two, and then circle back for the buyer rep agreement.
Take a breath. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
Sometimes, we are advocates of a one-step listing appointment. So you generate the lead, you pre-qualify the lead, you set the appointment, you send the pre-listing pack, you go on the appointment. I mean, it's a 7-step listing process. So Julie and I coach you guys to basically go to the seller's house once. And at that point, if you followed all the previous steps, mostly sending the pre-listing pack, then you're going to most likely get the contract signed while you're there at the seller's house. In some cases, they'll, believe it or not, have already signed the listing because of the fact that they liked what they read in your pre-listing pack. Okay, remember what I'm telling you. It's going to be really relevant to all you buyers agents in a second. So that has been the process for years. So what actually has changed in the whole process on the buyer side? Well, typically buyers have no presentation. They have no process. They have no required processes let alone a pre-listing pack or pre-qualifying.
They just wanted to see a house.
They just want to see a house. Now you're going to go through the same processes we've been teaching listing agents to do. Now, there is an exception that we teach our listing agents. In some cases, if you're competing against a seller or a listing agent who does a 2-stop listing presentation, or it's a more expensive listing, like if it's a big farm or big estate or big ass something or another, or again, you're competing against another agent that will go and preview the house and then come back and do a presentation. Well, we teach you how to compete against those agents. Or again, if you're dealing in a marketplace where that's standard practice, we teach you how to adapt to that as well. Well, guess what? The same thing is now going to work when you have a one-time showing agreement. Let's say you meet with a buyer at Starbucks or whatever. And let's say, you maybe gotten this buyer from a referral or whatever. You have a sort of relationship with them. You pre-qualified them. They're good to go with the lender. And maybe they're telling you that they're maybe talking to a couple other agents. So you're still having in the process of basically earning their trust. So what you're going to do is you're going to sign a one-time showing agreement with them, which we give you an ethical real estate professional. Mm-hmm. You're going to go out and show them a property or properties, and then you're going to explain to them. So listen, let's go out and let's just make sure we're a good fit for each other. And after we are done, and we show them. You guys are going to learn the entire process while you're showing properties, the 3 timeout script, the floor model script. We're going to teach you all of this stuff as far as ethical real estate professional designation goes. And then, Mr. Buyer, after you're comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with you, then we're going to make a longer term commitment, 90 days, 6 months, a year, whatever they're agreeable to, and whatever, frankly, you're agreeable to. So you're going to let them, essentially get to know you, whether they want to work with you or not, on that first trip. And then you're going to have them come back and say, okay, well, before we meet again, we need to have the paperwork signed because those are the rules that all of us have to work, within. And chances are they're going to sign it right there and then. So some people are going to be more sketch about signing these types of agreements. So you have to earn their business, but we've got provisions for that in the ethical real estate professional designation system.
Well, which answers the question, why would I want to commit to you? Right? That's what agents live in fear of because they're hearing every headline is saying articulate your value. Well, how do you do that? What is an ethical real estate professional? That's where we've helped you fill in those gaps. What makes you different? Why would I not just sign with you, but actually happily sign with you? That is possible. And we know that because we did it that way for years, right? Following the exact steps that we're talking about. I'm glad that you related The potential two-step buyer agreement is just like a two-step listing agreement, right? We can have a little bit of getting to know you. That's normal. It's okay. And maybe that one house that you show them, they end up buying and you do the paperwork prior to the contract. There are several different ways this can go. But none of it will go the way you want it to if you have not first had a buyer presentation showing them what to expect. Just as you do with a listing, agents are used to competing for listings. What makes you different? Where are you going to market my property? How would how are you going to communicate with me? All of these things. That's just shifting over now to the buyer side as well. And it's time for you guys to, make that just as professional. Personally, I like a lot of this because it takes the fluff out of the business. Even the bit about that we just discussed where if your agreement with your buyer says X, that you can't make X plus just because the listing that they love is willing to pay more. To me, I like that because for a while, the hot button, easy solution was, well, I'm a buyer's agent. I'm just going to be competitive I'm just going to charge $1,000. I don't care who you are or what you're spending. I'm just going to be flat fee. Well, if you do that and everything you show is paying 2 or 3 times that, that's not really the best practice, is it? I mean, I like a lot of this because it makes it more professional. Your buyers know what to expect. You know what to expect from them. And if they're not serious, for whatever reason, fine, part as friends. It's okay. You're not going to have 100% of your buyer database where you've been nurturing for 20 or 25 buyers that you think are going to transact. Probably not all of them are, and that's okay.
How many of your personal clients, I know you don't have very many, how many of your personal clients have been in the business for more than 20 years? Can you think off the top of your head? You have
Probably
15 personal clients?
70% of them.
70%. Okay, so I'm worried for all the agents that are listening right now who are listening to people on YouTube who are
getting their quote coaching from
right
YouTube.
and training from people that basically have never you guys have got to be super careful who you're listening to in a market like this, because a lot of people are just parroting what each other say, and you're going to start hearing the same things over and over again because they don't know what the hell to do. And if you're an agent and you don't want to break the rules, you just want to work with, ethically work with your buyers and ethically work with your sellers, and you want to get paid for your time, makes total sense, right? It's called being a professional, but you're given a lot of misinformation. Or maybe your office, we're hearing this a lot. My broker doesn't tell me what to do. My office manager, my team doesn't know. We're hearing this constantly.
I heard on the news, don't forget that.
Oh my gosh, all the crap that's basically being poured into consumers' ears. Julie and I were just out in California running into and hearing conversations that was just it was so full of misinformation that consumers are going to be confused. Your quote-unquote leaders are going to be confused. So you're going to have to really self-educate, but really, frankly, we've made it easy for you with the ethical real estate professional. Just plug yourself into that designation, and you're going to then be excited about the prospect of having buyers work exclusively with you. The buyers that won't work exclusively with you, after you've presented your value to them, following our presentation and everything, an ethical real estate professional, are probably not real buyers. They're probably not serious about purchasing a home. That's what's going to be hard for a lot of you to deal with, is the emotional fact that you have far fewer actual, genuine, qualified, willing, and able to buy buyers than you think you do, which means you're going to have to actually learn how to generate more leads yourself. And a lot of the bot buyer leads are some of the worst quality buyer leads. So even if you have a huge CRM, a database full of people, how many, think about it. Those people don't have relationships with you. Those people are going to be very, when you just simply, message them and say, if they say, for example, I want to see 123 Elm Street, and all you've been doing is dripping on them, and now you basically have to have them sign an exclusive, but you aren't a member of Ethical Real Estate Professional, what's the probability that they're just going to ghost you? 100%. Mm-hmm. You're not going to know. Why would they want to sign exclusively with you? Because you're not presenting the reason why they should. And if they bought and sold real estate before and they haven't been asked to sign something like this, you're going to freak them out. And I think there's going to be a lot of buyers who are going to want to buy real estate, who are going to go to listing agents and buy it directly from the listing agents.
Yeah.
And they're going to find, people that are skilled, like our members of Ethical Real Estate Professionals, and they're going to buy them from them. And all the other agents that are trying to, I think, put it together, figure it out, look for shortcuts and look for easy buttons, they're the ones that are going to get absolutely, I think, they're going to be, it's going to be horrible for them, honestly.
Well, I've already seen many cases of this, sadly. The fastest way to rid yourself of buyers who are probably serious, but are about to walk away from you and either go to potentially listing agents, open house agents, and or new build sales reps, is to simply email them a link to sign your buyer agreement without any explanation of it, and then get mad at them because they didn't instantly sign it. That's a great way to drive your buyers away from you.
So you just said something. So listeners, did you know in open houses you don't have to have exclusive signed?
Let's talk about that. That's
Yes,
a
let's
big
talk
thing,
about that.
okay?
Now, Julie's going to skip through her other
okay.
points. If you want the notes from today's podcast, and she's skipping through 3 points because point number 11 here is really a big, I think, frankly, it's going to be the elephant in the room, and this is a big friendly elephant,
Yeah.
not one that's going to flatten you. But our notes are available exclusively to harrisrealestatedaily.com subscribers. It's our daily newsletter. You'll get all the notes, all the long-form notes from all of our podcasts, and every single podcast has long-form notes. We do that intentionally so that you can use these notes to educate yourself. Maybe you are an office manager, maybe you are a broker, maybe you are a team leader, and you really want to essentially use state-of-the-art information to help your agents. Well, it's waiting for you at harrisrealestatedaily.com. So go ahead and subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing. So, Julie, let's talk about point number 11.
Yes, and this is important, especially in current times, because we just went through the first full week, certainly full weekend and almost full week since August 17th. This is probably the biggest mistake that I've seen, and that is how to handle open houses with unrepresented buyers. Here's a typical thing that you'll see. How am I ever going to make money from open houses? How am I ever going to sell this house if the buyers that are coming won't sign to walk through the door?
But Julie, it's even worse because we're seeing brokers, office managers, team leaders
Yes.
who are telling their agents that they cannot allow anyone into their open houses unless they somehow stand at the door and get them to sign these onerous contracts.
That's right. You are not buyer agency contract police open house agents, listing agents. Okay, so straight from the NAR, open houses and unrepresented buyers. Here's exactly what they wrote. No written agreement needed. If an MLS participant hosts an open house or provides access to a property on behalf of the seller to an unrepresented buyer, no written agreement with the buyer is required since the participant, MLS participant, is working only for the seller. Stop preventing buyers from entering your open houses without an agreement. Don't do that. You do not have to do that. It is not your job to, interview these wayward buyers trying to look at open houses.
So now more than ever, if you're not a listing agent, learn how to be a listing agent. Join
Yes.
Premier Coaching for free for 30 days. Just go to premiercoaching.com. Yes, do that right away, premiercoaching.com. But if you have a listing or listings and you're not doing open houses every single Saturday and Sunday and every other day that your seller will allow, you're missing a huge opportunity. Because what you're going to see, and I don't know for how long, is a lot of motivated, disenfranchised buyers whose buyer's agents just got fired because of the fact that they didn't know how to present the exclusive to them. Mm-hmm. And they're going to want to walk through those open houses, and you have an opportunity to pick up a lot of buyers. Now, if the buyer doesn't buy that house, and you then have to show them another house, you have to get the exclusive signed.
Yep.
So you're going to have to learn how to articulate your value. And again, that comes back to being a member of Ethical Real Estate Professional. Text the word buyer to 47372, buyer to 47372. But open houses are going to become the absolute huge, an enormous opportunity for agents that actually know how to work them at the highest level.
I think, especially in the short term, that open house traffic is going to go up as a result of unprofessional agents expecting buyers to just, sign whatever they send on over. And that buyer being like, well, why would I do that if I can just go to an open house this weekend? And that open house agent isn't making me sign anything. I think that also applies to driving a certain amount of buyer traffic to new construction.
Let's talk about, Julie, when you and I were first in the business, and now generation ago is when we were first in the business. But we would do open houses. We had no listings.
Yep.
And so what we do is we go to the other agents, mostly agents that were in our RE/MAX office,
Yep.
and we would ask if we could hold their listings open. And they would always say yes because they didn't want to do it.
Right.
OSU was playing whoever that weekend, and they wanted to basically watch football. Fine with me. And Julie and I would hold these open. And we did that every single Saturday, every single Sunday, and we picked up a lot of buyers that way. And what we looked for were price points that were going to involve most likely a listing. So it's a move-up house, a house that a buyer would probably be selling out of their first house or their second house to buy the move-up house. Those types of open houses are always a gold mine. You'll get fewer buyers than you will on a first-time home buyer type price range, but you'll generally speaking, you'll get better qualified buyers that also have listings to sell. But yes, hold other agents' listings open. No, they don't have to be an agent in your brokerage or an agent, you guys can understand. But ask permission. You can't just randomly go to the MLS and hold a house open. Work with that listing broker. Ask to hold it open. And again, a big listing broker with a lot of listings is probably going to be thrilled to have that listing held open, because their seller is going to want to see that they're trying to do something to get the house sold. So there you go. Don't use no listings as an excuse not to do open houses, because open houses are going to be the frictionless way to get in front of as many buyers as you possibly can.
Huge opportunity.
And it is an opportunity because of all, I think, the misinformation, the fear and loathing, frankly, that's out there in the industry. And this is going to persist for some time until, frankly, a lot of this stuff is relitigated and till a lot of, revised. And that's going to take, honestly, guys, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So your standard operating procedures no longer apply as of about 3 days ago. So do consider what we're offering to you guys to get on the list to be a founding member of Ethical Real Estate Professional. We're going to open the doors at the end of this month, probably for the first 100 of you to join. And to get on the list to be invited, you have to text the word buyer to 47372. Text the word buyer, BUYER, to 47372. And when we are done with the product and we're ready to release it, we are sending, when you guys see this, I have to say, I'm very proud of it.
Me
to
too.
be honest.
I'm excited.
It's something you and I spent just hours and hours on it, but it's something that I'm excited because I know when they see it, they're going to have a massive sense of relief because it's going to give them the confidence to go out there and frankly, want to present to as many prospective buyers as possible to get exclusive signed.
Well, knowledge equals confidence.
And ignorance equals fear.
So get the knowledge.
And get the knowledge. So move past that. Text the word buyer to BUYER and do that right away. So text the word buyer to 47372. I know we've got to go.
Well, here's what I was thinking. With all the consternation and all the confusion out there, that's amongst agents. You know what hasn't changed through all of this?
Yeah, I do.
The number of motivated buyers and sellers who need your help.
And that's the reason that Julie and I are not really, we've been telling you guys this, that we knew there was going to be a big change with buyer agency. I remember Julie and I were at a big meeting I'll even say, we were at a big meeting for eXp Realty.
Yep.
And I don't remember how many people were in the room. It was 100 people.
It was 2 years ago, maybe?
I think it was 3.
Maybe 3 years ago.
And I stood up and I said, eXp Realty should be focused primarily on being the place where listing agents go.
Yes.
And I gave my explanation as to why. I told them that I thought buyer agency for a variety of reasons was going to be, essentially going through a lot of changes with, that and all these things. And you know how many people said anything after I said that? 0. Do you know how many people came up to me and thanked me for saying it afterwards? 0. Do you know how many people right now are asking Julie and I what the hell they're supposed to do? All of them. Okay. So we knew this was going to happen. Did we know it was going to happen because of the result of litigation? No, but it didn't make sense that there was going to be essentially a statutory entitlement to a real estate transaction of a certain commission amount for buyer agents without that becoming a point of contention in the transaction. Just didn't make sense. And guess what? We proved to be correct again for different reasons, but here we are today. So what are you guys supposed to do? Don't wait for the clouds to clear. Don't try to continue to be business as usual. Don't wait for the MLSs to figure out the ways to police all these things. You need to get ahead of it and accept the fact that these changes that are in place, though they will morph into other, they'll change
Certainly.
and they'll evolve, of course. But this is the way business is going to be done. It's not going to go back to the old way. You're always going to have to show overwhelming value, as you always have to sellers. Now you're going to have to show it to buyers, or you're not going to have anybody to work with. And those agents out there, who are a lot of you who have just been buying leads from Zillow, Realtor.com, and all the others, how are you going to actually bridge the gap between you buying that lead? Maybe you're paying for it up front, or maybe you're paying for it off a referral fee. How are you actually going to get that buyer to want to work exclusively with you? How are you going to get it when they have no loyalty to you? They just filled out a form on a website. They have no allegiance to you. What are you going to do? The only solution is going to be what we believe, frankly, what we're, I think, very confident in believing, is going to become all of you becoming members of Ethical Real Estate Professional. Because then you're going to be able to explain to them, why it is that you're a member of Ethical Real Estate Professional, what you offer to them above and beyond a normal real estate agent. You're going to show them the facts and the figures, and then they're going to see the value that you present. And if your competitors aren't presenting similar or superior value, guess who they're going to want to work with? Because every agent is going to have an exclusive sign. So if a buyer has to sign an exclusive, they're going to want to sign it with an ethical real estate professional agent versus just some agent that, emailed them the form and asked them to sign. You guys understanding the new realities of this market? Don't wait. Don't struggle. Jump in the time machine and go forward 12 months and, get a sense of what the market's going to be like. Are you now struggling in 12 months in the future? Or are you super happy that you took the actions necessary today to make it so that you weren't just competitive, you were dominant in your marketplace? That is what we know ethical real estate professional will be for all of you. So text the word buyer to 47372 and we'll put you on the list. Anything you'd like to say to these guys as we sign off?
Well, we've crossed this bridge with many coaching clients before.
Yep.
And I can tell you that, 100% of them, after they have used the buyer presentation to then close for the signature, because closing for the signature is the logical ending to a great presentation, and it goes effortlessly, smoothly, logically, with confidence, their sense of relief is palpable. I mean, it's universal. Everybody says the same thing. Oh, I know I can do it now. I feel so much better because now the buyer has some confidence in what they can expect from me. I know that they're loyal to me. It went great. That's what I want all of you to feel. Get away from the consternation and the confusion and go towards the professionalism. You deserve that. You deserve that commitment from the buyers who are serious about working with you. But you can't just go about it and expect that from him. You have to do it in a professional manner, just as the professionals that you deal with handle your business.
That's right. So stay tuned in, guys. We're going to be diving deeper into ethical real estate professional over the next couple of weeks, as well as telling you anything new about the evolution of how this is actually going to affect the industry. We are overly optimistic, perhaps, because we know there's enormous pent-up demand for buyers that want to buy and sellers that want to sell. And as long as that's true, some procedural changes to the way that, essentially you guys work with those consumers is not going to stand in the way of that enormous opportunity that a market like this presents. So get past your fear and let's embrace what the market has to offer. And if you frankly are willing to move quickly, you're going to have an unfair advantage in your marketplace. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.